It's funny how your life can change in the blink of an eye. Just when you think nothing out of the ordinary could happen. One cold, quiet night, I found myself face to face with someone whose actions I'll never fully understand. They stepped in, stopped something I didn't even see coming, and then vanished into the darkness, leaving more questions than answers. Looking back, that brief encounter didn't just shake up my routine. It changed the way I see the world and the people around me. Stay with me as I share how one mysterious night turned into a lesson in gratitude and quiet wonder. There's a certain expectation that comes with walking the same road home night after night. Patterns become comforting, and the familiar turns of the sidewalk, the glow of street lamps, and the hum of distant traffic all blend into a quiet routine. But that night, something felt off from the moment I stepped onto the empty street. The air bit colder than usual, and every breath seemed to hang a little longer before fading. The silence pressed in, broken only by the steady rhythm of my own footsteps echoing in the darkness. I kept to my usual route, but the world around me felt sharper, every detail heightened. The park benches were dark shapes crouched low, and the streetlights flickered, casting more shadow than light. A sudden, almost imperceptible movement at the edge of my vision made me pause. I scanned the area, seeing nothing but the gentle sway of a tree branch. Still, my pace quickened, as if my body sensed something my mind had yet to catch up to. It's strange how quickly comfort can turn to unease. My skin prickled, and the street, once so predictable, felt unfamiliar. The sound of my coat brushing against itself, the crunch of gravel, each noise seemed amplified. Then, just as I tried to dismiss the tension as imagination, I heard it. Another set of footsteps, faint but unmistakable, matching my pace a few yards behind. I glanced back, expecting to see someone, a late-night jogger maybe, but the street was empty. The only movement was a torn flyer fluttering on a nearby pole. My grip on my bag tightened, and my heart rate spiked. Your mind flickers on high alert at a hidden cue, even when nothing obvious is there. Instincts sharpen, and every sense strains for information. I told myself it was probably nothing, just nerves, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The footsteps grew louder, closing the distance. My heart hammered as I fought the urge to bolt or pretend nothing was wrong. I kept walking, but every muscle was tense, ready to react. Then, before I could decide what to do, a figure stepped out from the shadows ahead, blocking my path. The suddenness of it sent a jolt through me, and I stopped short, breath caught in my throat. The stranger's approach was steady, not rushed. They moved with a kind of deliberate calm, their face hidden beneath a hood, features blurred by shadow and the weak streetlight. For a moment, time seemed to slow. I couldn't read their expression, couldn't tell if they meant harm or something else entirely. The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncertain. I stood rooted to the spot, mind racing. Who was this person? What did they want? The questions tumbled over each other, but the stranger simply watched me, saying nothing. Then, with a small, controlled gesture, they raised an arm, not toward me but past me, pointing up the road. The movement was so quiet, so intentional, that it startled me more than if they'd spoken. That simple gesture shifted everything. My focus snapped from the figure to the direction they indicated. But in that moment, the uncertainty hung in the air. The cold seemed sharper, the night deeper, and my nerves buzzed with anticipation. I didn't know yet what the stranger had seen or why they'd stepped in, but something told me this was not just another walk home. It's in moments like these that you realize how quickly the ordinary can slip into the extraordinary, leaving you suspended between fear and curiosity, waiting for what comes next. figure ahead didn't hesitate. Their bodies shifted, angled just enough to command attention, and with a steady, silent gesture, they motioned for me to stop. I froze, caught between confusion and instinct as their hand cut through the cold air. No words, no warning, just a clear signal. My breath clouded in front of me. I tried to speak, but they were already looking past me, eyes fixed on something I hadn't noticed. I followed the direction of their gaze. Suddenly, a car burst into view. A flash of headlights, tires screeching, the red light ignored as it tore through the intersection without slowing. The car whipped past the spot I was about to cross, close enough that I felt the air shift in its wake. My heart hammered as the reality of what almost happened sank in. In the space of a heartbeat, the street returned to stillness. I stood there, stunned, trying to understand how quickly everything had changed. The stranger had seen it all before I did, stepping in with a quiet certainty that left no room for doubt. They acted, then vanished. No words, no trace, as if they'd slipped back into the shadows. I spun around, searching for them. The sidewalk was empty. Streetlights flickered overhead, throwing long, empty shapes across the pavement. I scanned the park, the alley, even the doorways nearby. Nothing. It was as if they'd never been there at all. My hands shook as I tried to process what had just happened. The memory of their outstretched arm lingered, how quickly they'd reacted, how calm they'd seemed, how their presence had shifted everything in an instant. I replayed each detail. The silent command to stop, the way they focused on the danger before it became visible, the moment they disappeared without a word or a glance back. There was no chance to thank them, no way to ask why they had intervened. I was left standing alone, the echo of their action hanging in the air. The only thing I could be sure of was that someone had chosen to step in, to protect a stranger, and expected nothing in return. As the adrenaline faded, I found myself wondering about their motives. What makes a person act without hesitation, without recognition? Why step forward when it would have been easier to keep walking? I kept coming back to the same thought. Sometimes, the most powerful gestures are the ones that leave no trace. I started walking again, slower this time, glancing over my shoulder at every sound. My mind replayed the scene, searching for meaning in the stranger's silence. The street felt different now, less predictable, more alive with possibility. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been given a second chance by someone I'd never know. The rest of the walk home passed in a blur. Each step felt heavier, but also lighter, as if I was carrying a new awareness with me. I kept thinking about that simple, silent intervention, the way it cut through the night and left me safe, but changed. Part of me wanted answers, but another part realized that maybe the mystery was the point. That night, I lay awake, replaying everything. The image of the stranger's hand, the flash of headlights, the empty street. The questions circled in my mind. Who were they? Why did they help? Would I have done the same? I didn't know, but I knew I wouldn't forget. There's something about an act of kindness that asks for nothing in return. It lingers, reshaping how you see the world and the people in it. As I tried to settle back into normal life, the memory of that night followed me, quietly urging me to look closer at the moments and people I might otherwise overlook. And as I found myself reflecting on the stranger's choice, I started to wonder about the weight of kindness, how it can change not just a single night, but the way you move through the world. Sometimes it takes a single, silent gesture to shift your perspective. After that night, I kept thinking about the way the stranger stepped forward without hesitation or expectation. They didn't ask for thanks or linger to see what would happen next. They just acted and were gone. The simplicity of it all made me stop and reflect, not just on what happened, but on why it mattered so much. In the quiet hours after I got home, I replayed the moment over and over. The stranger's timing, the way they moved, the certainty in their gesture. It all seemed intentional, not just luck or coincidence. That idea unsettled me at first. It's rare to see someone act so selflessly, especially when no one is watching. But the more I sat with it, the more it felt like a quiet reminder that kindness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it slips in, changes everything, and disappears before you can even say a word. What stayed with me wasn't the fear of what could have happened, but the realization that someone had cared enough to intervene, expecting nothing in return. That sort of selflessness seems rare, but maybe it's more common than we think. We hear a lot about people turning away or freezing in moments of crisis, but this was different. This was someone choosing to help, breaking the silence of an ordinary night and leaving everything a little different in their wake. Over the next few days, the memory surfaced at the oddest times. Standing in line at the grocery store, catching someone's eye on the sidewalk, I started to wonder how many quiet acts of kindness I'd missed before. How many people had stepped in for others, unnoticed and uncelebrated. It made me pay closer attention to the world around me, to the small ways people show up for each other. There's something powerful about witnessing kindness, even when you're not the one directly involved. Research shows that seeing or experiencing an act of generosity can set off a ripple effect, a cycle where one good deed inspires another. Kindness can spread quietly, shaping the mood of a room, a street, even a whole community. That idea gave me hope and a sense of responsibility, too. But it wasn't just the act itself that lingered. It was the mystery. I kept wondering who the stranger was and what made them stop that night. Maybe they were simply passing by, or maybe they knew exactly what it felt like to need help. I'll never know their reasons, and maybe that's what makes their actions so meaningful. As Dr. Robert Emmons puts it, gratitude isn't just about saying thank you. It's about recognizing and appreciating the good things in your life. For me, that meant learning to sit with the unknown and let it fill me with appreciation instead of questions. Reflecting on that night, I realized it had changed something in me. I started looking for ways to carry that spirit forward, even in small, everyday moments. One morning, I noticed someone struggling with a heavy door as they balanced groceries in a stroller. I hesitated for a second, then stepped in to help, not expecting anything in return. It was a tiny gesture, but it felt different. It felt intentional, like a quiet echo of what I'd experienced on that cold night. That's the weight of kindness. It lingers, reshaping your view of the world and nudging you to act, even when no one's watching. It's not about grand gestures or recognition. It's about the quiet moments that leave a lasting mark, both on the person who receives and the one who gives. The stranger's action became a part of my story, a reminder that even small acts can ripple outward in ways we may never see. As days turned into weeks, the details of that night softened at the edges, but the feeling remained. I found myself wondering less about the stranger's identity and more about how their choice had changed me. The memory became less about the mystery and more about the connection, a brief, wordless exchange that reminded me of the goodness that can exist between strangers. And as I carried that memory forward, I realized that sometimes the most meaningful moments are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers. The impact of a single act, done quietly and without fanfare, can last far longer than we expect. Whoever they were, their actions left a mark I carry with me. The unanswered questions, who they are, what led them to help, linger in the background. But what stands out is the memory of their quiet, decisive kindness. It reminded me that heroes often move unnoticed through ordinary life, making extraordinary choices when no one expects it. Think back to a moment when a stranger made a difference for you, even in a small way. Now picture that outstretched hand in the darkness. What gesture could you offer someone tonight? Let's remember those moments, and maybe become that stranger for someone else. And as I carried that memory forward, I realized that sometimes the most meaningful moments are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers. The impact of a single act, done quietly and without fanfare, can last far longer than we expect.